Guys, so here's the quotient rule. This is yet another derivative rule that's very important that we need to know about. The proof to this quotient rule is on page 120. Again, I won't ask you to duplicate that. I won't ask you anything about the proof. It's just there. Pretty interesting, again, using the limit process and things like that. It's pretty neat. So, we're going to look at the quotient rule today. The quotient rule is the way to find the derivatives when you are dividing two expressions by each other, or two functions by each other. So you have this idea that you would have the bottom equation times the derivative at the top minus the top equation times the derivative at the bottom over the bottom squared. One little phrase to help you remember this one, because this one, unlike the product rule, order truly matters. If you were to split these apart or do these wrong, if you were to change the order of that subtraction, everything there would then be incorrect. So order truly does matter on this. And one little phrase that I've seen that I've used in college when I was learning this and doing it to other things, and I've heard off and on throughout my teaching career that has helped students, is this little acronym saying the lower equation times the derivative of your high minus your high equation times your derivative of your low all over low, low. So low D high minus high D low over low, low. It's kind of catchy. It's kind of whatever. It may help you to remember the order in which you need to do this. Low, meaning your bottom equation, D high, derivative of your top, minus high, your top equation, D low, derivative of your low, over low, low, bottom times bottom. Low D high minus high D low over low, low. Okay. So let's get to work. The derivative let's change our directions here. Sorry about that, guys. And let's find your first derivative. Notice I keep saying the word first, meaning that a second and third is implied that we will be finding. But my first job for you before we even start all of that is to get you comfortable with finding that first derivative. So for example, y equals 5x minus 2 over x squared plus 1. So you can see that I am dividing here. And the answer to a division problem is a quotient, so it makes sense to use the quotient rule. So my first derivative is the bottom equation, x squared plus 1, times the derivative of the top, 5, minus the top equation, times the derivative of the bottom, 2x, all over your bottom squared, low D high minus high D low over low, low. So I'm going to reorder this to show you so it's neater to see what's going on. You can multiply in any order, so I'm just going to move that 5x in front of my parenthesis of 5x plus or 5x minus 2. Let me switch that. Over x squared plus 1. So I'm going to distribute my 5 through. We're going to simplify it. You always want to make your derivatives look pretty. So I distributed that negative 2x through. And then I'm just going to combine my like terms. So I get a negative 5x squared plus a 4x plus a 5 all over x squared plus 1 quantity squared. All right, so there's your quotient rule. So another problem we can try could look like h of x equaling the square root over x cubed plus 1. So my quotient rule says the bottom, low, times the derivative of the top minus the top times the derivative of the bottom all over the bottom squared. Now normally when we do this, we don't square out our terms on the bottom. We like to have it in backward form. We like to reduce all possible fractions. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my 1/2 x to the negative 1/2 and I'm going to distribute through. So that gives me 1/2 x to the 5/2 plus 1/2 x to the negative 1/2 minus 3 x to the 5/2.
Remember hard boils some eggs for tomorrow? There's 5 eggs. Is there a certain amount you want left? Like 2 or 1? Do them all?
That's fine.
Okay.
All right. So in here, I have like terms. And I have 1/2 x to the negative 1/2. 1/2. Sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. Minus 5/2 x to the 5/2 over x cubed plus 1 quantity squared. At this point in time, I'm going to factor out a fraction. I'm also going to factor out my lowest exponent of negative 1/2. So that leaves me with a 1 because 1/2 times all of this gives me that. Minus 5 because 1/2 times 5 gives me 5/2. And I factored out a negative 1/2, so that should leave me with x to the 3/2. No. Let's try that again. I had a 5/2. And I factored out a negative 1/2. So that gives me 6/2, which is 3. All over x cubed plus 1 quantity squared. So that 2 comes to the bottom, the x to the 1/2 comes to the bottom. I have this x cubed plus 1 squared on the bottom. And I have a 1 minus 5x cubed on top. So there's my first derivative. Ooh, that was fun. Here was a lot of fun. Factoring, especially when it comes to factoring and negative exponents, is a skill that I use a lot of. So just pay attention to that stuff. You'll see it throughout a lot of recordings and just stick with me on it. It's okay if you're a little bit lost, but just stick with me on it. I can also do f of x equals cosine x divided by x. So my first derivative here is the bottom times the derivative of the top minus the top times the derivative of the bottom all over the bottom squared. So my first derivative here is negative x sine of x minus cosine x all over x squared. Boom. So hopefully this is starting to look a little bit better to you guys and that you're understanding it. Alright, so that's it for quotient rule. I'll be right back with you guys for this 6 trig functions.